sign is Mayhew, and that says LaRoche. You want to swap them?
And I don't have to do anything. Except this.
Good.
Do you guys want to swap your name tags?
Swap your name tag,
Mine?
yeah.
Yep.
You don't want to be me?
I'm free to be.
Colin has better credit.
Other business orders where we have.
Here you are, Roland.
Veterans Ave and the administrative appeal. Or do you want to?
Are you okay?
It's up to you, the order.
You are all right.
There's no
Well, I was gonna
representative.
go and tell everybody that 485 is not gonna be heard tonight to start with, and then just run right down the list that way. Okay, 'cause the packets are done that way.
Yep.
Makes it easy.
Shouldn't there
You
be
ready?
a hearing, talk to the head of the line?
They have them
Well,
downstairs
that's
doing
starting.
other business.
We can do that one. That's probably gonna be 5-10 minutes.
Dean's on vacation.
It's just
Okay, so we're gonna do,
courtesy.
that's fine. You see, that's why here, give me direction.
45 won't
So I
be
know
heard
what to do.
tonight.
Just don't kick me like,
Okay. Yes, all right.
Miss Pearlie used to.
Be all right.
She would kick me.
No kidding.
Yeah. Ready? Good evening, everybody. Thank you for being patient for us to get started. We had a few things going on. I'd like to welcome everybody to the February meeting of the Zoning Board of Adjustments. I would like to remind everybody, if you have your phone, to please put it on silent. Number two, as we drift through the agenda, there's going to be portions of it that people will be able to come up and speak for or against it. When you come up, please tell us your name and address. There is a piece of paper up on the microphone stand that you can sign in with if you so wish. We'd appreciate it. It'd make us taking notes and stuff so we know who said what. Makes it a lot easier. The other few things, as when you come up and speak, we speak to the board, not to the audience. We don't, the audience should remain patient for their time and give the common courtesy to the person speaking so they can get there, because they're probably just as nervous and anxious as everybody else coming up to speak. So give them their fair chance to speak, okay? And to start with, there was on the agenda tonight a application 485 Endicott Street East, number 12. They have requested to be moved to the next meeting next month. So if you're here for that one, they will not be heard tonight. So we apologize for any inconvenience, but the applicant does have that ability prior to the meeting to ask to have it moved to the next meeting, okay? With that,
I'm looking.
if they're here, we're gonna go ahead and move other business up first.
It's this one.
But before we start there, I would like to ask you call the roll.
Yes, sir. Richard Bodie,
Yes.
Jane LaRoche,
Here.
Roland Mayhew.
Here.
Michael Del Vecchia.
Here.
Stephen Boggart, Chair. Michael Foote. And
Here.
Marcia Hayward. Here. As staff, Sheena Duncan, Conservation Technician, myself, and recording staff, Scott Pelchat, Zoning Technician.
Okay, so let the record indicate we have a quorum, and we'll go ahead and get started. Everybody get an opportunity to review the minutes. With that being said, if there's any additions, corrections, subtractions, there being none, I'd ask that we make a motion to accept as written.
I make a motion to accept as written.
Second. Discussion? There being none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Motion passes. Bam, bam. See, we're flying through this. All right. So, what we're gonna do is we're gonna go ahead and look at other business. I'm not sure if the applicant is here. Before I do that, I wanna verify the applicant is here. That is for 96, it's 2022-0096, the variance for Veterans Ave. Motion for rehearing. Is that applicant here? No. Do we think they're gonna be here?
No, she was just gonna have the letter to kind of speak for itself.
Okay.
That's fine.
So the applicant, Jeff Robinson, / agent Laura Robinson, seek a motion for rehearing of the zoning board of adjustments under RSA 677:2, section 3. There will be no public comment on this one. And so if everybody, I think it's gonna be at the very back of your package.
It's 20 and.
Veterans Act. Yeah.
So that everybody get an opportunity to review it. It appears that the question is not the actual acceptance or the approval of it. It is the condition that was set upon the motion of using, what was that called?
Using Veterans Ave.
Veteran as an
Instead of Route 3.
access point, okay? And the questions that came up is if they don't have, because it's a private road, if they don't have deeded access or an easement or anything like that, I'm not quite sure that the board can say you must go off onto someone else's property and achieve an easement or whatnot. So therefore, what in this instance, I think it would probably, so we can clarify all the issues around this, that maybe we should, because it's not of the approval, it's just of the condition, so maybe based on that, we set up a rehearing for that. And that way we can clarify all aspects of that motion as far as the conditions and stuff, to make sure that the motion, the condition can be met or not via legal remedies. Okay?
Can we just at this meeting, just remove that condition? Could we discuss it? Or does it need to be a separate rehearing?
It's got to be a second hearing because it'll have to be renoticed as we're gonna do this, so that way the abutters and stuff would have an opportunity to speak
To
for
have
it or
some
not.
say.
I'm not aware of anybody speaking for or against it. I do apologize, but I didn't watch the tapes or anything, so.
Did this come to light because of the applicant, or did town council point that out?
It came to light from from the applicant.
Okay, so they're requesting access from Route 3 because Veterans Ave is a private road.
Right.
Okay.
And the basis of that was, I read somewhere here, they had something like, it was like 12 or 14 feet, I'm not quite sure, on Veterans Ave and 87 feet on Route 3 or something. So, like I said, I think in order to clarify everything so that we can have a nice, clean break with this one, that we go ahead and set up a rehearing to hear this again. It shouldn't take that long to go through it with them and find out what's what and who's who.
So, the follow-up question, so I've driven by, and they've already begun the process of building. Will this setting up a rehearing restrict their being able to proceed with building at this point?
No, I do not think so, for the
Just
fact
a question.
that they are, no, it's a very good question. If it was something that we were trying to initiate, it would have probably been asked them already.
Okay.
So that they would be aware of it, but since they've requested it,
Mhm.
then they're aware of their own progress of what they're building and stuff, and they probably are waiting to see where to finalize something, because I don't know if this driveway was going to, like I said, I wasn't here, so I don't know if this is just a driveway or just a driveway going to a garage or
Sure.
the aspects of it. Yes, sir.
I would be in favor of a rehearing as I read it, and having been here, I was like, it should be simple enough if they have the agreement from the state for a curb cut, which is one of the,
It'll cost them, but that's on them, not us.
So with that, I'd like to make the motion that we do provide a rehearing for this application. And if it's convenient with the applicant, we set it up for next month and put it at the very beginning of the meeting.
I will let her know.
Okay?
I'll second.
No, we gotta do the
Yep.
motion. It's
I'll
not-
make that
Got a
motion for a
second?
rehearing on 20220096, the variance concerning, to review the final set on it.
Second. All right, we have a motion, do we have a second? We got a second. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye?
Right.
Aye. Okay. Thank you. All right, so that takes care of that. All right. Now we can move back to the top. Is that okay?
Yeah.
All right. All right, we'll move back to the top of the agenda. And the first item on the agenda tonight is, boom, boom, boom. Is 2023-0002-65 Administrative Appeal, 65 Gale Ave, applicant John Steinberger. If I pronounced it right, and if I didn't, I apologize. Request administrative appeal of the denial of short-term lodging permit based on lack of compliance with requirements noted under Article 7, provision, supplemental provision, Section M, short-term lodging 1, permitted or prohibited in the following district. C, owner occupied 1, not less than 150 days out of the year. Is the applicant here?
He's here. Raise his hand.
You want to come and speak?
Sign in. Am I speaking or
Now, go right ahead, introduce yourself for the record, and
John Steenburgen, 65 Gale Avenue, Laconia, 03246. Yeah, I mean, I bought it, when I originally bought it, I thought because I was living there and was gonna live there, that I didn't need to apply for the permit. Because reading into it, it says you have to live there for 150 days. So I didn't bother putting in for the permit. So then after that, there was a complaint about the short-term rental. So that's when it became now like a whole application thing. And so I called the office continuously, tried to make sure that I checked all the blocks, sent in all the paperwork, tried to make sure I was covering all the bases. And yeah, and so then it got denied. Well, it got, originally, the housing inspector came through, was like, yep, you got all the fire extinguishers, everything, smoke detectors, and I was like, okay, great, wonderful. I was like, what do I do next? He's like, well, you're good for 2 years. I said, so that's it? And he's like, yep, that's it. I said, all right, cool. Signed off the paperwork, and then I get a letter in the mail saying it got denied. So when it got denied, I was like, oh, I thought everything was fine. But apparently it was a couple of complaints. One was for a dog that was barking, but that has been since resolved. And then apparently my absence from the property, noted by neighbors. And again, you know, I've been there more than a month. I just bought it in the beginning of September. I also live in Texas, and so I chose to stay in Texas while it was warm
Which is beginning.
versus staying up in New Hampshire while it was cold. But this summer, I'm bringing my family back here to stay the allotted time that I'm supposed to. But I've only had it for 6 months, so that's where it was like, well, I can understand that if it was a year already, but I hadn't even owned it that long, so I haven't even had time to get in there and bring everything in and my family, so. And so here we are. And so I just kind of I bought a vehicle, it's registered in New Hampshire, grew up in New Hampshire my whole entire life, born and raised here, Concord. My parents live in Sambrenton down the road. My sister lives in Kentucook. I just came from their house. Born and raised here, I mean, so I don't really know what else I can do to try and provide proof that I am living here or reside in the residence for a certain amount of time, so now I'm here, so. But, yeah,
And where's your domicile?
domicile,
Yes,
65 Gale Avenue.
okay. And so you vote here and not in Texas?
No, I haven't voted yet. I haven't voted in Texas either.
Okay.
I have yet to.
Are you
register.
registered to vote here?
I'm not registered to vote here yet.
Okay,
I'm not registered to vote in Texas either, though,
okay.
so.
Can I ask what your license says?
My license has Texas on it, but again, I haven't had time to go down to the DMV.
And I just say, just as
Yeah.
a point, and thank you for your
Oh,
service.
thanks, I appreciate it.
Having gotten out of the service myself, within 6
Yeah.
months was abruptly told that if that is here where I live,
Yeah,
I need to change my license.
yeah,
And they most directly told me that.
yeah. I've had a slew of residences since I guess my first license, right? And then living in New Hampshire and having that my home of record for my 10 years when I was in the Army. Getting out, I actually had a Texas residence because I was living in Fort Hood for a long time, and then I moved to Massachusetts where I was working at GE for a while, and I got pulled over and the cop was like, let me see your license, and I had a Texas license, and he's like, what are you doing here? I was like, well, I'm stationed here in Natick, and it's just, you know, but then I got a Massachusetts license, then we moved to Texas, and now I moved to New Hampshire, so there's been a lot of moves. Yep.
I have a question. What is the relationship with Granite State
So that's good.
Property
yeah.
Solutions? I see addresses for Las Vegas and for Saugus, Mass.
Yeah,
I get confused as who is Granite State PPS LLC?
yeah, that's my entity. So the reason why it's such a unique situation is because I borrowed the money from my aunt for the down payment because I didn't have any extra money, and I found this house and I wanted to buy it. And the only way that she would find it reasonably secure was to put it in some sort of entity. So while I was living here, if I was making this a short-term rental, that it was protected in some capacity so that if anything should happen, it would be contained to that entity itself. And that's why I sent in the memorandum saying, yes, I'm the managing member of the entity, and I am the owner of the house as well.
So what is Las Vegas and Saugus, Mass?
Las Vegas is, I work for my wife, and I'm a project manager, and she has a company that's based out of Las
Is that
Vegas.
Posh Properties?
Yep.
So they're Las Vegas and Saugus.
So Las Vegas is her company, right, is in Las Vegas. And Saugus was our last residence before we moved. That was when I was working at E. GE.
When you were working with the real estate agents, did any of them tell you about what the rules and regulations were?
No, I actually went back and talked to my agent, and, well, one of the, well, I guess not really, but, to deal with, but later on, finding out that I'm supposed to have a permit for it before I even do that, I asked her, I was like, hey, how come you didn't see this? And she's like, oh, well, I thought it was only Portsmouth that needed, or was outlawing short-term rentals. I was like, well, that may be, but you knew my situation, right? Like, that's also kind of like it's a biggie. And I'm like, that's a huge misstep, right? And so, but I was like, I looked into there, that's where I started to look into the regulations, like, okay, well, if I live there for 150 days, then I don't need to, right? And so it's like, well, if it's homeowner occupied, I was like, okay, then that's fine. Then getting the letter in the mail saying, hey, no, you have to get a short-term rental permit. I was like, oh, well, I thought it said here that I didn't have to if I lived in it as well. And that's where it was like, no, you need to still do that even though you live in it. Like, it still needs to be recorded somewhere and or monitored and checked and made sure it's legitimate, it's safe, it has everything it needs to be up to par, right? So that's where I was like, okay, well, fill out the application, put in everything, all my information, and was trying to go by, I guess, the standards and rules or whatever, so.
Will your wife be moving here?
My wife, no, she takes care of her mom in Texas. Her mom has medical issues, so I have to come back and forth, but, yeah. But she's
So-
probably gonna come with me this summer, right? But, her mom is getting some assisted care right now, so that's why she's not able to come with me every time.
So has staff asked you for documentation showing that you actually have your domicile at that address?
As far as like,
Well, they should have given
Utilities.
you specific requests for
Yeah.
information.
yes,
And from what I'm understanding is that they have not received anything from you other than your verbal assertion that your domicile is that piece of property. And they've asked that you provide them with paperwork,
yes,
several different things
yes,
that would assert that you lived there.
correct,
And I believe they've also indicated that if upon your being able to prove non-verbally that you do reside there,
Correct.
that they would reconsider it. Is
Yeah.
that true?
partially.
What
but
part is not true?
that they did not receive any physical copies of any sort of documentation. I can attest that I've talked numerous times with Dean and Sheena numerous times on submitting paperwork, any sort of document they've required, I've sent them.
Well, they're saying, from what I'm understanding, the documents they are requesting, they're not getting.
I could clarify.
Please.
Okay, John actually has submitted, first he brought us an internet bill. The problem with an internet bill is that, you know, I could have a commercial space and I could get, you
Right.
know, internet
So that's not an
service, so that's
accepted document.
Right, now, we haven't clarified in our, permitting process exactly which, documents would make this, a slam dunk, right? So he actually has brought us a vehicle registration. Unfortunately, you can register a vehicle at a vacation address too. We don't have something definitive in the form of, let's say, a driver's license, He doesn't have school-age children to show that there's a child registered in a school district. There are a few different forms of identification that would make this a little more stable and substantiated.
Right.
We just haven't received any of those. At some point, Dean just made the call that, you know, I mean, we've had this application in our office since I believe the end of October. And he said, you know, with what we're hearing from your neighbors, the fact that this is in a proper property management, you know, real estate investment
Right.
trust sort of ownership,
Mhm.
there are certain things that are just red flags that we just cannot clearly state that he has lived there for 150 days out of the year. And so he was issued a denial. We haven't necessarily.
With the
been-
caveat that if he was being able to provide the appropriate documentation, it would then allow him to continue, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So I think they have done whatever they could in order to help you to move along with this. And the ball's in your court to provide them with the documentation necessary for them to assert that you do, in fact, have that as your permanent domicile address. Okay, there are many different avenues
Yeah.
that you may be able to provide them, but without that documentation, it doesn't appear that they've done everything they could trying to help you. In denying this is not a permanent denial. It was done with the caveat that if you provide them with the information necessary, then they would move right along with it for you, okay? So I think in this case, it would probably be best if when you sit down with Dean and figure out exactly what is necessary and do that via face-to-face and not necessarily through emails and phone calls. Because when one sits face-to-face, things
Definitely.
have a better habit of
Yeah, and I
coming
not
to a
to
solution.
kind of impede, but I have gone down there. I have spoken with Dean face to face, Sheena, housing inspector, everyone face to face in the office, asking them, what else would you want me to provide? And they said basically, you know, you've provided what you need to. You've checked all the blocks as far as what documents we've asked you for, so it's really, I mean, I'm joined the VFW here, my orthodontist and dentist is in New England, my VA therapist is in New England, besides that, I mean, right now, I got my inspection here for New Hampshire, I've got, I don't know what else, I mean, at that point,
Well,
Chairman, may I
Yeah.
say something? So, John, you find yourself in a really unique situation.
yeah,
You're in a transitory period of life for all the reasons, and they're all, from what I see of you, they're all great reasons, you know, moving the family. But here's the thing, right now, 65 Gale is not your home. It is, but it isn't, you know what I'm saying? And you haven't owned the home long enough to actually substantiate that it is your home. So we can only look at the details of it. So does this not mean that in 3 months from now, maybe, or 6 months from now, maybe, but right now, that's this uniqueness of your circumstance that really kind of makes it unqualifiable, because it has to be your home. That is, and then the reason why the city has these rules set up is because, and you have no idea how we see it on our side, how people will take that and they will take any opportunity they can to take advantage of that for their own personal gain. Don't fault them for that, but that's the reason why we have rules. And you just find yourself in a really unique situation where I think that we believe you, and that's fine.
Yeah.
And so now just take the steps to validate what it is that you are doing. You have to live there for 150 days. It has to be your home,
Yeah.
you know. And the reason why we have the STL is for that reason, that if you are not gonna be here year-round, you're just gonna be here for the warm summer. Our town is great for that. But you gotta live here. It's gotta be your home. And if it isn't, then you're not gonna get the short-term lease, all right? So that's your homework, if any.
And also, I'm looking at the Secretary of State's website, and it says it's for real estate and rental and leasing.
Yeah, to me.
And that's another unique caveat of that is, at least from our view, you've
Yeah.
got LLC, you've got this other thing, and, you know, one of the questions that I had pre-looking at the document here, I don't even see your name on anything. You said you submitted to us a document that says you are the owner of Granite State? I haven't seen that.
Member managed, yeah.
Okay, I haven't seen that, so, and I said the question that I had coming in, and now I see you
Yeah.
face to face, and we're good, but how do you even have the authority to speak on behalf of Granite State? I have no documentation. It tells me
Yeah.
you're just a person, you know? You see what I'm saying? So what I'm saying is, we have laid out some homework for you.
Yeah.
And I think that you can get there, you know, just go through the steps, and, you know, what we're saying is whatever our decision here, whatever, it's not permanent, do
Yeah.
your homework.
Can I,
The other thing is,
Roland.
number one, the house is still not in your name. And number two, the 150-day requirement, that's per year. That's not a one-time 150 days,
Correct,
and then you're home free for the next 5 years.
correct. Yeah, no, I understand that,
Okay.
yeah.
has the management name just changed?
Sheena, you were gonna say something?
Yes, he actually did submit, it seems that there may have been a mistake in compiling the, data for the packet. He did provide us with, a certain amount of proof that, he had the, management changed to his name. So it may not be primarily owned by him, but it does say in his registered business in New Hampshire that the management is in his name. But again, it's
That's
still
up-
in the name of an LLC that rents properties, which is the
Right.
glaring red flag.
I don't understand how that can be legal.
So, I think at the moment,
This is supposed to be for mom and pop type of activities.
not for companies.
What?
It's not for companies.
That's right, companies should not be owning houses that are in A, B, and B.
So, any other questions on this?
I have, if I
Yes.
may, what would, I mean, besides me, I guess I have two questions. One would be, how could I prove that I'm staying in my house for 150 days out of the year, let's just say, right? A. B, what sort of documentation would you feel more secure with as far as me being able to,
That would come from the planning department area,
okay,
okay? We don't set the standards, we just read the rules and interpret the rules and stuff. We don't set the rule itself. That is done through their office and the city council and stuff. So we just abide by what regulations they give us to work with. Okay? So like I said, it's not that you're,
no, I understand.
where this is applying for a variance or something else that is, once is denied, is denied.
Yeah.
This is, it's just trying to clear up some of the paperwork and seeing how you can get that done through his department, okay? All right?
So
So-
live there for 150 days and get your license changed, and we'd probably be good.
How do I prove
So-
the 150 though?
Well,
That would be up
That's on
to
you.
them,
Okay.
okay? So, need a motion to, deny the appeal for the denial.
Deny the
Sounds weird. Two negatives to make a positive. I make a motion that based on the facts that have been presented before us, that at the current time, the planning department has exercised its decision-making in an appropriate manner, and that further documentation can be provided, should be provided by the applicant to clarify whether they are domiciled at that property or not, and if it meets all the conditions thereof, for them to provide a permit. That's my motion.
I second that motion.
We have a second discussion of the motion.
I'll discuss it, just a brief, if you give me a moment. John, I just wanna I'm for short-term rentals. You
Yeah.
know, it has to be done responsibly. Garbage is picked up on Tuesday in that neighborhood. You drive by there Saturday, garbage cans are still out. You go around the corner, there's 12 cars parked up on the right-of-way. You can't rent it out to 12 people, 16
Correct.
people.
Yeah,
That becomes a nuisance.
correct.
If you're living there, take a picture of yourself with the Daily Sun every day. Here, do a selfie with the Daily Sun with your house in the background. You could prove you live there. That's all you can do.
Yeah, okay.
End of discussion.
Okay. Any other discussion? All those in favor of the motion? Aye. All right.
All
Thank
right,
you.
Thank you.
Thank you, John.
Next.
Steve, someone in the back wants to speak.
Left here.
Can we still address this matter as neighbors?
Never asked for
Um,
public comment.
Well, it's not really,
She's someone that's been coming to my house.
listen, there's really usually no public comment on this, because this was basically a yes or no for a decision that was made by, so it's, if it was to have came to us as a special exception for short-term rental or something like that, there would have been public hearing for it and stuff. We always give that right to the people to, especially the abutters, so that they can speak their pros and cons for it. But we are not at that stage at the moment. This was just an administrative appeal for a decision that the planning department made, and that's all that was for at the moment, okay?
Well, how do we address concerns and issues that we're having? with the-
Ma'am, if you could get you to come up front.
Sure. How do we address, as neighbors,
Your
concerns
name and
and-
address.
Oh, I'm sorry. Kelly Dion, 23 Winnequa Street, Laconia. First of all, he had the cease and desist letter dated January 10th. There's been numerous times where there's been Airbnb activity since.
We understand, and from what I understand, from being at city council meetings and whatnot, there was specific directions given to ensure that all the rules and regulations in the RSAs are being followed, and the legal ramifications. Unfortunately, in life, moves slower than a snail sometimes. And it takes time, everything takes steps to follow through. Everybody, and believe me, I mean this, everybody has the rights, okay? And sometimes going through all these processes, it looks like your rights are getting trampled on, but if you looked at the other side, they're going, but my rights are getting trampled on. And so in this situation, everybody looks like they're getting their rights trampled on, in which case it's trying to be addressed in an appropriate manner. And it just unfortunately takes a little bit of time. It's not a light switch that you can switch on and off, you know. So the planning board, the planning department is aware of everything that is going on. They have been monitoring the situation. They're trying to work and stay in contact with the owner of the property or the applicant or the business or whatever is. They're in contact back and forth. So it's trying to get worked through. It's just, unfortunately, it takes time.
Okay.
Okay? I know that didn't give you all the satisfaction you wanted.
No, it's all
but-
right. So you're basically telling me to go through the planning department?
Yes.
I
you-
can do.
Things in writing work better in these
Emails.
situations,
I've-
emails.
You've gotten them.
Yeah.
They've gotten them.
And as you see other things transpiring and stuff like that, keep that
Okay.
updated and stuff so they can be aware of everything also.
Okay.
Okay?
Yep, thank you.
Thank you. So with that, we're gonna move on. Next on the agenda is, it's a variance, 0005 variance on Lafayette Street. Applicant Christopher Bold. I apologize for not saying it. Bolt. A variance from Article 3, District Zoning Map, Section 235-14, District Established. C, Residential, Single Family, Article 5, Use Section. So anyway, and you are, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the record, I'm Chris Bolt of Donahue Tucker Chandela up in Meredith, here representing the Long family, Meridian Properties. Tim and Merzaz are here. Carol LaFlamme, our realtor, is also here. I give you a narrative with my application. I will not read it. We'll hit the highlights. This property is at the end of Lafayette Street, right beside the power company's easement and substation. As you know, that substation is the edge of the city and butts up against the business industrial park, Guilford. It has 0.4 acres, and because of the arc of the cul-de-sac there at Lafayette Street, it has a variable width, about 100 feet at the narrowest, 130 on the sides. The request is to authorize a duplex on this lot. This lot is in the RS zone, where it's supposed to be single-family only. That is your ordinance that has been in place for decades. This provision, when you modified things, for example, the ADUs, accessory dwelling units, and creating the overlay for higher density that is in place on the edge of this neighborhood, the foot of this neighborhood. You didn't go through and modify the RS definition. But the RS definition in the zoning ordinance also includes some fairly high-intensity uses, such as schools and churches. So it's not really just single-family. To put it in context, the hospital parking lot is at the far side of this neighborhood, Lafayette Street. There are a number of trails that go through those backwoods. And the city still owns a lot, a couple lots removed from this. I designated it as the old water tank lot, but there's no water tank there. But that was my recollection of what it was originally intended to be for. From a standpoint of the 5 statutory criteria, my narrative goes through that in detail. As I've said in lectures, and I see many of you have been in them over the years, if I'm giving them for the NHMA or the OEP, the first 2 are really one now under our case law. The public interest and the spirit of the ordinance are viewed at the same way. And that is basically you look and see, will granting this variance unduly and in a marked degree conflict from the stated purposes of the zoning ordinance from which we're seeking a variance? And the court tells us we really look at two things. Will it unduly and in a marked degree conflict with those purposes by changing the nature of the neighborhood? And my prime example is if this were a convenience store or a gas station coming in the middle of a residential zone, that changes the world. This is a duplex of similar size in the footprint to other houses in this neighborhood, in a location that can completely comply with the rest of your regulations. Side setback, rear setback, height, and more importantly, the 60% green space regulation you have. So this is not going to be that sore thumb in the middle of the neighborhood. It's on the edge. It is a residential use in a residential zone, in a zone that allows basically 2 units with an ADU type of setup, and allows at the foot of this street and Pine Street, the street on the backside, not only duplexes but multifamily as a matter of right. As we all know, housing is in short supply. There are prime projects, proposals going through the legislature trying to increase housing stock. A lot of money is being thrown around to get development in. This is a small infill type of project. We're not getting any government money for this one. This is a duplex that will fit into this neighborhood. We've given you, my Exhibit A is the footprint, and we give Exhibit B some renderings of it, multi-pages, that'll show you the type of building. This again is Meridian. Meridian's known in this area. They do good work. It's going to be a nice product that's coming in there. The other prong that the court tells us to look at when looking at spirit of the ordinance and public interest is there going to be a threat to health, safety, and welfare as a result of this variance being granted? This lot is on city water and sewer. There is not going to be a septic system that might overflow or a well that will then take water from somebody else. This is not going to have a threat to public health, safety, and welfare. So I would argue, based on the materials I've given to you, that we meet the first 2 prongs. The third prong is the substantial justice prong. That is really a balancing test. You as the ZBA look to see what are we asking for as a property owner, having the certain rights as a property owner has. As Mr. Chairman, you were saying, somebody feels that they're being taken advantage of, one side or the other of any argument. Yep. With this, there has to, however, be some gain to the public from the denial that outweighs the clear loss to my client as a result of that denial. And here, because we're meeting everything else, the setbacks, the height, the lot coverage, we argue there's no benefit to the public from a denial. You're in fact removing housing stock in a residential zone that is in keeping, especially in light of the fact that we're butting up against the power line easement and the substation. We ask that you find that we've met the third prong. The fourth is, by granting this variance, there should be no diminution of surrounding property values. Here, again, it's residential use in a residential zone. We do have local realtor Karen LaFlamme here, who's prepared to give you some testimony on this project not having a diminution in property values. Mr. Chairman, I can finish my spiel and then Ms. LaFlamme can come up, or would you like her to come up now?
Whatever you feel. That's fine. You can finish.
Okay.
You're on a roll, so.
Fair enough. So we believe that there's no diminution of surrounding property value. The fifth prong, as you know, is the unnecessary hardship. And the court tells us we look at the special conditions of this property, that distinguish it from others in the neighborhood, and that is everybody around it. And I've listed that in my materials. That includes the size of this lot, it being at the end of this cul-de-sac, it being next to the easement, it having its particular size of .4, which is slightly larger than most that are on that road, it being close to but not in the overlay district where this use would be allowed as a matter of right, and I wouldn't have the privilege of being in front of you. And that it's on city water and sewer, so that it's not increasing the load on the property. And Ms. Hayward, you're looking questioningly. Can I answer a question now?
No, I want you to finish.
Okay. But those are special conditions for this property, and the court tells us we look at its size, we look at its built nature, and this is a vacant lot here. Then we're told to look at what are the specific purposes of this zoning ordinance provision that we're seeking a variance from. And here it's the RS purposes that say it's really for single-family homes with support services such as schools and churches. Because you could have, a building put there for a school or a small church or something like that, that sometimes is viewed as a more intense type of use than a two-family would be. We're saying we're beneath that in the way of traffic, in the way of number of users, things of that nature. And thereby, there is no substantial connection between that purpose and what we're asking to do that would create a justification for denying the variance. Because an unnecessary hardship really has to be something that is to be a basis for the variance, something that we're asking to do something that's just not reasonable. Again, that convenience store coming into this lot, that would not be reasonable for this neighborhood. It wouldn't be reasonable to put it on the city water tank lot, a convenience store. But a home, or in this case, two homes, is a reasonable use in the neighborhood, especially considering at the foot of this street, it's allowed as a matter of right. In fact, I think there's a triplex at the bottom of Lafayette there at Highland. But bottom line, there is no unreasonable use coming as a matter of this project. And therefore, we feel we have met the unnecessary hardship prong. And I have given you some case law sites, the Harborside v. Parade case. The mere fact that we're asking for a variance can't be the ordinance is a taking. And that's why you have that, your role is that safety valve is what the court has told us. So we believe that we have a reasonable project. It's sufficient in size to meet all of your other requirements. If we were at the base of the street, I wouldn't be in front of you. And accordingly, I'm happy to answer any questions you have, and we ask that you grant the variance. Yes, sir.
Will the home be owner occupied?
It is not going to be owner occupied, it's going to be family occupied at least at the beginning. But there is not it's not an ADU where that is a requirement. This is a duplex. And again, it is being owned and built by Meridian Properties, which is an LLC, which we don't want to go into the same grounds as the prior gentleman's case.
Okay,
Oh, go ahead.
go ahead.
Just two questions. In your application, you said that, that this duplex is not substantially larger than a single-family residence that could be built on the same property. My question is, then why are you not building a single-family residence?
Because it is also an investment.
Okay. And if you build a duplex now, the duplex could be sold to an owner, and they could rent out each half, or you could then sell it each duplex individually and have two owners. I
That would
mean,
have to be condoed under your zoning ordinance.
So what are your plans here? What are you thinking, how it's gonna go?
My understanding, and Tim can correct me if I'm wrong,
Please come up. Introduce yourself for the
Yep, I'm
record.
Tim Long, the owner of Meridian Construction and Meridian Properties. I think I've met a few of you here before. We have a building on Artisan Court in Laconia. It's Guilford address for the fire department, but it's Laconia. We're a Laconia taxpayer. Been here for 30 years in the community. 18 years as a taxpayer in Laconia. The situation is that my daughter came back after 7 years in California, taking care of her grandmother and going to school, finishing her education. She's a special ed teacher who looks after autistic children, works for a outsourced company in Portsmouth that is placed in Franklin, New Hampshire, and has been working there for over 2 years. She tried finding a place to live. She's not married yet. It's almost impossible to find something that she can afford. So it's time for my daughter to, 33 years old, I'm trying to help her out, get her into her own living situation that she can afford. Eventually, there's a pretty good chance, we'll see where it goes. I wouldn't guarantee it right now, but it's a pretty good chance that she's gonna own the building, live there permanently, or at least for a number of years, and have a tenant. And that tenant will help her pay the mortgage. So that's the potential sale that I see, is
Yeah.
we're gonna hold it for a long time.
Yeah.
And then, through her growth in life, if she can afford something more and bigger in a different neighborhood, so be it. So that's kind of the master plan.
So
Signed.
then condominiumizing it is not on the game plan here at the moment?
No,
Okay.
not at the moment. I wouldn't,
Now,
be honest, 10 years from now, it
are
could be,
you building these to be at market price or
yeah,
the consideration? Okay,
yeah.
okay.
And to be clear, as you know, Mr. Chairman, if we had come in for workforce housing benefits, we'd have to have said so in this first application, and we did not.
Well, what should've, could've doesn't always pan out, so that's why I learned to ask questions.
You got it.
To clarify.
So the other
For
part
the
of this,
record.
if I may add, that in the whole idea of even doing this, so I'm a high-end lakefront home builder. And I do a lot of commercial work. I've done projects throughout Laconia, the Lakes region, all over the place. There's a big need for housing in the community. It's kind of a test for me to see how I do on even building this at a certain cost.
Mhm.
And if we're successful at it, and I can make market rate work, I'm gonna try to continue some moves into that arena so that we can help the community. So when I first saw the lot on Lafayette, actually it was my wife who first saw the lot and talked me into going over. I saw the hospital and I said, this is a no-brainer. If my daughter lives here, she's gonna be able to afford it. Pretty good chance we can help somebody who needs nice housing to work at the hospital.
Yep.
Maybe there's another play for more of that in the area. That's really where I was going with the whole thing.
Nope, I get it.
Yeah,
Thank you.
thank you.
Any other questions at the,
Got one other. What is your permanent residence?
Sorry?
What is your permanent residence?
Alton Bay.
I didn't think it was Artisan Court. I didn't know there were any apartment houses on Artisan
Oh,
Court.
no. I occupy 70% of an eight-unit building over there.
Hence the taxpayer. Mr. Foote, you had a question?
No, not right now.
Okay.
so if you would like for your real estate person at this time to speak, then we could clarify that prong of the variance and
I would.
get some,
And give your background, number of years
Thank
you've
you.
been doing this. And all
Thank you. My name is Karen LaFlamme, and I'm with Remax 360 by the lake, and I've sold several properties to the Longs over the year. And we looked at many, many properties, and as you know, there's a shortage of rentals out there, and what you're looking at, no one wants to live in, in the price range that they can afford. The home that they are looking to build is going to be all, new and something that's needed. We need rentals in this area big time, as you all know. And this is gonna give his daughter a house. He could build the house the same size and make it a 4-bedroom, to answer your question, Mrs. Hayward. And you could have 4 different families, 4 different roommates like they do at college or whatever, and that's not what he's looking for. He's looking to conform with the neighborhood, and the neighborhood is single-family, abutting all multifamilies, duplexes, the Winter Street, next street over, just drew a blank on the road
Pine
in.
Street East,
Pardon me?
Pine Street.
No, not Highland. The Highland has many,
Pine
many,
Street.
many. The school into Woodland Heights, Winter Street, Upper Winter Street.
Yep.
Is a lot of 2 families. And it's not like we're taking a neighborhood of multi-million-dollar homes and asking you to change the picture. There's a lot of people right on that street that have an in-law apartment that they rent out. And he's just trying to do it legally and talk to you about coming in and putting what is drastically needed is housing in the Lakes region.
So you were gonna speak of how this will not affect the value of the surrounding properties? It will either be positive or negative?
I think it'll be positive. There's a lot of older homes on the street. There isn't one new home or 2 newer homes on the street, but most of them are older homes. Some big homes, like I said, that people, rent out a little portion of it. And it may be a family member, I'm not sure, but I know that there are people that rent along there. I've been in the business 40 years, 45 years. I've been selling up here since 1979, and I've never seen what's going on with the 2-family houses and rentals and multifamily. It's crazy for the poor people that are trying to find rentals that are decent. You're looking at a $2,000 rental that I wouldn't want to put some of my pets in, and some of the rentals that we looked at when we went out shopping for rentals for his daughter.
Okay, thank you.
And as I just mentioned, I've been in the business for a long time. And I don't see it in any way diminishing the value of anything. I can't imagine anybody would be. It's not going to look like a standard duplex type building, and he's going to try to make it fit into the neighborhood as much as possible. And I think it's going to be a plus for the neighborhood, not a negative.
Thank you. Now,
Any other questions for me?
Yes, I do. Or to one of you,
Come on up.
or both of you, whoever chooses to answer.
Well, my wife's a little smarter than I am, so maybe we should get her up there.
Now,
You too.
I looked at the drawings of the house and stuff like that, and they are very nice and stuff. Now, is it gonna be designed in such a way that it cannot be turned into 3 units or 4 units or any manner whatsoever? Well, you can't,
Right.
someone can try and add to it. I'm talking about from the inside, though,
Oh, no
where
way.
they start hacking up the inside of these
No,
places.
you couldn't
and-
do it. No, because those
Okay.
2 garage bays tie up a good, 25% of the first floor.
Okay,
Yeah, the units aren't huge. The whole, I think it's not, it's 900, it's 1,800 overall for both units on a footprint on the first floor, right?
Right.
So that's,
The building footprint is 8.
ask if anybody from the public wishes to speak for or against this application. Please come forward at this time and introduce yourself for the record.
Good evening, Mr. Chair and members of the board. I am Brett Beliveau. I live at 141 Lafayette Street. Some concerns from some of the people up there. I will speak for the concerns for myself. Some of the legal speak about it. I'm gonna break down the 5 points for getting a variance from layman's terms and the way that I see it as it applies to this application on Lafayette Street. Number 1, it should not be contradictory to public interest. Well, there are concerns from people on that street. So can we say for sure it's not gonna be contrary to public interest? There's already abutters that have concerns, so that's public interest. So it's going against that, that's why we're raising questions. Number 2, the spirit of the ordinance is observed. I just read on which side of this proposal you're looking at. So there's no really way to hit that up one way or the other. Same thing kind of for number 4, values of surrounding properties will not be diminished. Besides when the bubble burst and stuff, property values are normally always on the rise. It's hard to prove this because in the long term, the property values will go up, but will they go up as fast with this development as they would have without it? And that can't be answered by us. That's something down the road. I kind of took offense to what something was said about this not being a neighborhood of $1 million homes. I live there, and the money that I put out for that home and all the projects that I've put into it, it certainly feels like $1 million. Putting a single-family residence on that lot, besides the value that they talked about, the income they would make from it. A couple of times it was mentioned about how down at the end of the street there are multifamily things. That's not on Lafayette. The one tri-unit that was mentioned that has a Highland Street address, Highland Street is UC. The other streets that are kind of in our area are zoned RG, which do allow multifamily. Ours is RS, which is not supposed to allow that. I didn't have time to go into the legal precedents, but I did notice that one was from the town of Chester, one from Chichester, and one from Keene. All places that I chose not to live at for one reason or another. I like Laconia because the way it is, we have our zoning districts set up to allow multifamilies in certain areas. It doesn't have to be at the end of a RS zone. The other thing that concerns me, and I believe some of the other abutters, is I don't know when they bought the property, but according to Laconia Access GIS online, the same owner of this parcel owns a parcel across the street next to the city one. So we kind of have a fear that if this is allowed, then you won't be able to disallow one across the street. And then, right next to that is the city parcel that will soon be for sale. I don't know if I can say that or not. That's 1.1.
Said in the public, so.
That's 1.1 acres. So then what do you allow there? You've allowed duplexes on 1, maybe 2. Do we subdivide that and start throwing duplexes up? Does someone ask for something to put more? You can argue a daughter living in half and renting out the other half. Once you allow it, there's nothing to keep them from turning the other half into Airbnb, which we definitely don't want. So those are just some of my concerns. Some of the other people from Lafayette can mention other things that they have or stuff that I missed. My thing is just that it's called a residential single-family district for a purpose. And, you know, that's me. None of you live up there on the road on Lafayette. I don't know if you live in the RS district or not, or if you would be okay with someone putting a duplex next to your house. But those are some of our concerns. Your best intentions, yeah, their daughter's gonna live there, they're gonna rent out the thing to someone that works at the hospital or wherever. Sounds great, but if that doesn't pan out, right now you're seeing it, the easy money is Airbnb.
So would you say that by putting a multifamily in that residential, you are changing the essential character of your neighborhood?
2 garages, 2 entrances, I mean, that's a duplex. We've heard stuff before on the planning board where certain developments didn't want to let a house be built because even though aesthetically it looked like other houses, it was too small in relation to all of the other houses in the development. The size of this, it's probably, if you go up Lafayette, the first half of it are older buildings. So you're gonna get some small stuff. And by the way, I don't know everybody on the street, but I don't know of anybody that's renting out a space on Lafayette. There are apartments, like I said, at the very end of Lafayette, but those addresses, I think there's a place for everything, and that's why we have our zoning districts. And yeah, that's all I have, unless anyone has a question. Nope,
Thank you.
good to go, thanks.
Thanks, Brett.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Write my name down here. Excuse me, I have a cold, so. My name is Mary Smith. I live at 145 Lafayette Street, which I'm not a direct abutter, but I would be to the lot across the street. So I definitely have some concerns as to where that lot is going. I agree 100%, as I think most of the people in our section of the street, with everything Brett said. I actually know quite a bit of the neighbors on the street, and I don't know who she's speaking of, but there's no one there that rents. And if she does know of them, I'd like to hear the name, because I don't believe that's an accurate depiction of the street at all. I listened to all of this, and I know what they build. They build beautiful houses. The rendering, it's gorgeous. There's no doubt about it. I'm not sure that wanting to provide, your daughter a place as well as make money off of it is a good enough reason to give a variance to open up the door to what would happen to the other lots on the street. So if they get that, what's going to prevent them from coming and wanting to do it across the street? I don't know. But you've given them that okay, so how can you come back and say, you know what, this one worked, but this one doesn't? I don't see it. So I'm not sure that opening that door is a good thing. I also feel that the street, it is a street where young families with kids want to come in. It's a very established street. It's one of the safer streets. It's a dead end. I mean, there is a lot to offer. And I see that if you want to build a house and really bring something to the neighborhood, build a single-family house. You have 2 lots now, so build 2 houses. I'm not sure that the need is met, and I don't see how someone should be able to make money off of it just because, well, it works out and it's good. That, to me, is not a good reason for it. I do take issue, again, with the house not being $1 million. I don't think that should be a prerequisite to any of it. It's what is allowed, what isn't allowed. And I can't get past, I believe a variance should be something that you think of, there's a lot of thought given to it. It's to keep us from, all of a sudden we've got people there, whether they're renting or just, there's now 2 families living there, and what if they do bring the neighborhood down? A lot of people don't want to live in that area, and yes, we do have them on Highland Street.
Number one.
Please don't talk to the crowd.
Okay.
Talk to the board, please.
Our
Thank you.
daughter is actually getting married in June, and she is planning to live there. That's one of the drivers behind doing this house, because she couldn't really find anything, and her husband is. So it was really intended to be, she lives there and she has some level of income where she can support paying the mortgage.
Thank you. Anybody else wish to speak for or against this application, please come forward at this time and introduce yourself for the record.
I'm Jessica Lewis, 115 Lafayette Street. Sorry, public speaking scares the crap out of me. Excuse me. I'm also a teacher. I grew up on that street.
Think
I've
of
been
us
there.
as your students.
Yes.
And you're gonna educate us now.
So I've been on that street since second grade. It's been a home I've watched. I grew up with a bunch of kids. We played flashlight tag. We were always running the woods in the streets. When I think of a duplex, I understand the design. I understand how it's supposed to come out. But we have so many condos, and I know it's not a condo, but we have so many condos going up that are $5, $8, $1 million condos. We need more single family housing that someone like me, that I can go in. I don't have kids. I don't have a boyfriend. I don't have a significant other. It's just me. We need more housing that someone like me who works and like puts their heart into this city that can make their living. So I would love for her to move on the street. She finds it able to, but I would like it to be a single family housing.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
Which is stands for, in part for the premise, the voters put forward the zoning ordinance as it is written, and you shouldn't change. You shouldn't allow any variances. And the court says that's flat wrong. He's saying it's solely for single family, and that's the purpose that you should fulfill. But the court, the Supreme Court, that's the court over all of us. It doesn't matter that the case came from Chester or Keene, but it's the Supreme Court that sits in Concord and applies to all of us, has said you can't do that. You are here as the constitutional safety valve to protect all parties' rights, including the right of my client, who is the property owner and taxpayer. What we are asking for is a duplex. Afford a starter home price because of what you had to put into it. So a duplex is today's starter home, and more in keeping with the size of some of the older homes on that street that were built probably in the 50s, maybe in the 40s, as starter homes. So again, this is a residential use in a residential zone on this lot and this lot only. Yes, my client owns a lot down the street. That lot is not in front of you. If that lot were coming in front of you, some of their arguments may hold more water. But that lot's not in front of you. And future fear is not a basis for denial.
When an accessory dwelling unit where they wouldn't need to be in front of us.
Could not hear that.
You're allowed to have an accessory dwelling unit in a single-family home, single-family residential neighborhood zone. That seems right now to be the solution.
So the accessory dwelling unit cannot exceed
A
the
certain size.
750.
percent of the,
I
or
was
the
thinking
original?
square footage is what I was thinking.
I don't
I
think
thought
that-
it was
I don't-
relative to the
Size of
size
your
of
house, yeah.
the main house.
But an accessory dwelling unit, I don't know if that applies, Sheena, that is, it's still a special exception in this zone. You know, it's a special exception allowed, but it still is, yes?
I'd have to take a look at the
Right.
ordinance. I don't have a copy of it.
Does the
handy. that I can
ADU
think of.
have to be attached or unattached?
I don't think that it's,
Be over the garage.
right, I don't think it's what they want. They wanna have two separate units that they can sell as two units. They don't wanna have an accessory
Right.
dwelling unit.
We've
But
been here
obviously the
before
neighbors
on
don't want
yeah.
that.
So,
So the solution would be accessory dwelling.
I think what
Let's see, transportation.
Mr. Foot might be referencing is what is the people
It's an
difference
exception.
between having
Yeah.
a house with an accessory unit that you could rent out? You're gonna have two different families in the same place, two different, sets of cars, two different sets of everything, but it would be within line of the, code because it's an accessory dwelling. May or may not be 750 feet or square feet or not, but that doesn't set the precedence of how many people
sure.
or how many families would live on the thing. So, and I think that's what brings up that conversation, is if having two separate families living on this lot because you have an accessory unit now, what is the difference between that and having two families in a duplex? All the other family home with an accessory dwelling, which could accommodate two families, or you have a duplex that's designed to accommodate two families with all that. So, to me, I guess that's the philosophical
The difference
question.
being,
Of an
Well,
ADU.
except that wouldn't an ADU, all the
Would be-
utilities there has to be paid for by the actual owner?
no, they can have
and
a
not the
separate.
They can have
individual?
separate.
They can
Yeah.
have separate?
The
Okay.
difference being is you would not be able to sell half of the duplex someday. That's your accessory dwelling unit you cannot sell.
No.
You have to keep that and rent it out and be in control of
Are
it.
you allowed to rent out
Well,
an ADU?
you can't sell half a duplex.
Is that true? Can you?
You have to
Yes.
condominiumize.
Well, right.
Okay, and then, once you condominiumize it, then you could sell both sides of it and create the
Separately.
documents and
Right.
stuff like that.
But that's something that could happen with a duplex that
Yes.
you can't happen with an accessory dwelling unit.
Yes.
So,
Mr. Chair, I would just, before we go down this path of ADU, I'm gonna, just two things that I see on this here. Number one, it's RS. It's a single-family district.
Yep.
Every house on that street, except for right on Highland, is a single-family home, every one. I drove up and it looked specifically for separate driveways, separate entrances, and
Mhm.
none of them have them.
I was out there today.
What's that? And secondly, the community doesn't want it. And so, but both of the conditions that are relative to the hardship, their hardship is dollars, not necessarily, use. So,
Yeah.
and so that's what my observation that I bring.
Okay.
I would concur that after hearing our speakers, the residents, they feel it is a change in the character of their neighborhood.
It is.
And that's one of the things, it is not allowed, this is a single family, and by doing this, you change the character of the neighborhood. Now, if they hadn't cared, then I might feel differently, but they care. They care about the character of their neighborhood.
Okay. Yes.
So, if all you can afford to build is a tiny house at 420 square feet, is that a benefit to the neighborhood? I mean, that's not something you can raise a family in. If you have to go to one unit and you can only afford to build so big, would you rather have a tiny house? Or would you rather have two families with children? Let's imagine them, they're on their Stingrays and they're 7 years old, riding up and down playing. Doesn't matter if it's one family or two family. Cause the end of the cul-de-sac is not going to be developed because it has the, has the state on it, or
No,
what is it?
it's a city-owned
The city
property
owns-
that's
the city
going up for
owns the
sale.
property at the end of it.
Well, people more, so,
It's an access, it's an access.
I don't know, I just feel that in all of this that we hear, there's certainly a fear of a change. Change is always fear. You know that in my neighborhood, all my neighbors have changed? That's called gentrification. This here, I don't know. You're adding in, you're adding housing in an area that's accessible to the hospital, to jobs, to the grocery store. If it's based solely on the RS, I don't know. I'm undecided there. I can see two houses or a duplex there. And I can see a duplex across the street without it ruining the neighborhood.
But didn't everybody who bought into that neighborhood, they bought into it as a single family? You know, regardless of how and why zoning, really, it's not applicable to us here tonight. But that is, they bought their homes on a single family home street. You know.
This is affordable.
So,
I'm not voting, so it doesn't matter.
And what does happen to zoning if you, you know, it's, do you start going down the slippery slope by allowing multifamily in a zone that it's not allowed
it's not
in?
multifamily.
I'm sorry, a duplex, the duplex.
That's multifamily.
No.
No.
it's not.
Multifamily is
More
3
than 2?
units or plus.
Okay.
Two
Um,
units or less, yeah.
Two
You
families
gotta
don't count
clarify
as
that,
multi.
that's why I,
Two-family home.
You know, Mr. Bolt put on a good presentation, and I was leaning towards going for it, but right now, I'm gonna make a motion to deny the application.
now, I would recommend that we take each of the 5 criteria and discuss those so that it is part of the motion of why each one, and so that we can make sure that your motion is complete. Okay?
The findings of fact.
You can help me
Findings
along.
of fact.
So I'd make a motion to deny the application zoning 2023-005 variance for Lafayette Street due to the fact that the variance is contrary to the public interest, as you heard from the public that's most affected by this decision tonight. Everybody on the street is here saying, I don't want it. You're setting a precedence, what's gonna happen across the street? That's number one, we'll continue along here. Help me out if I miss something, please.
Oh, I'm watching.
The spirit of the ordinance is observed. Well, if we grant it, it's not observed.
Can we get a second, please?
I'm just making the motion still and going through and then we'll have to, I'll ask for a second when I'm finished. It's not observed. The ordinance is a single-family residential neighborhood, and so changing it is not observed in the ordinance.
So you're indicating that the benefit to the applicant should not be outweighed by the harm to the general public? Is
Correct.
basically what
I
you're
think
saying?
that was gonna come in the hardship area, but, substantial justice is not done by changing this. Granted, we need the housing stock in Laconia, but changing the peace and tranquility of the neighborhood to benefit one homeowner, landowner, does not do justice to the neighborhood. Diminishing property values, that's a gray area. It probably will not diminish any property values by putting that home in there.
Well, if I may interrupt there for a
Please,
second.
please.
There was actually no testimony saying positive or negative that it would have any, there was no facts and figures or any evidence provided to the board to say that it would or would not.
Right.
So it's kind of a moot point because there was no evidence of numbers or anything. It was just a person whose job is 40 saying, yeah, it shouldn't, so.
But let's say
but
Mary
without
Smith
evidence, there's no,
wants to sell her house in a few years, and there's a duplex across the way from her. Would it diminish her property value?
it's either a yes or no.
Maybe not, it's a gray
It's-
area, so.
It's a gray area, it's a yes or no.
You can't really say that it would or wouldn't. Moving right along, where am I? Number 4 and 5 here. 5, where'd we go? The hardship. It's not really a hardship if we deny this. The property could be used for something else, like building a single-family home with an accessory dwelling unit that they could rent out. So it's not really a hardship if we deny this application.
Being next to an easement for power lines and stuff does not create a hardship on the property.
No. The lot is big enough to build a substantial home. 0.4 acres. So there's not a really hardship there.
Okay?
And if I forgot something, please fill me
Nope.
in. That's my
Went down the
motion. I'm
list.
looking for a second.
Roland seconded your
Okay.
motion.
Discussion of the motion. There being none, all those in favor of the motion? All those against? Okay, motion passes 4-1. All right,
Thank you for your time, folks.
you're
Thank you.
welcome.
Oh, boy.
Thank you for your time, thank you.
And the last one, looks like for the night, is application 007, variance 8 Summer Street. Applicant, it seeks a variance from Article 6, Dimension Standards, Section 235-33, maximum residential unit density to allow for a third dwelling unit on a .13 acre lot where .15 acres are required. Hi, introduce yourself for the record and tell us
Sure.
how.
My name is Randy Otis, licensed land surveyor, and looking to try to make myself a home over here in Laconia. Specifically, I've got property at 8 Summer Street, zoned urban commercial. There's 2 units in it today, all pretty much the same size. One on the first floor, one on the second floor. There's a walkout basement, which I'm hoping to be able to finish off into a single bedroom for myself. I've got 5 parking spaces, two driveways, and as you pointed out, the lot is .02 acres, too small. So, hoping for variance, I guess. You have questions?
I'm curious, could you print out your 5 parking spaces?
Sure. It's kind of a crappy image because I couldn't get the color to work. But we got the house here,
Yeah,
and there's a driveway on the left that comes in, and one on the right.
mm-hmm.
These 2 spaces go to the first floor, these 2 go to the second floor. I'm proposing the 3rd space goes to the basement.
Randy, where's the
Oh, in
walkout?
front, you mean?
What's that?
It's in the front of the house?
Yeah, this is Summer Street out here.
So it's the parking spot, put your finger on that 5th one you want to go.
Yep, I want
Oh,
that one right there to go with the basement unit.
basement?
These 2 currently are being used by the second floor, and these 2 they enter over here, over the first floor.
Okay, so the first 2 on the left, that's kind of a tandem situation, right?
Yep.
Oh, okay, I see what you're saying.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Is there room side by side for another car there, Randy, or?
Yeah, we've had 5 parked here. Right now, you can actually kind of fit a 6th one in over here, but it's, in my opinion, not a.
And the walkout is in the back where the 76 is, 70?
Yep, if you follow the paved sidewalk around, there's a single door right here. This is all walkout out the back, and it's walkout on the side as well. So the foundation that's exposed covers this area right here. And there's 2 windows right here that I intend to replace with modern windows, apparently original to the house. And one door right here. I'm planning a second door with a mechanical space so that should there be breakers blown or some other thing, you don't have to disturb anybody.
Is there a sidewalk going down in front of your house?
I believe technically there is. There's one on the other side of the road too, but it seems to kind of blend with the streets a little bit. It's,
Because the reason why I asked is parking in front of that building would not be, I consider, because you'd be crossing that the sidewalk.
Correct, and that's why I don't consider
That I don't think would be an
space.
appropriate situation for a parking space. But I'm
To your
just
point, there's a paved sidewalk that runs through here, and that's why I don't consider the 6th space to be a spot, but 5 meets the zoning.
Now, when I went over there today, all the cars were in there. Very hard to get from Summer Street out to the back where you're gonna have your door.
Right now, when I've been doing work over there, we walk around the cars on the left and head around that way. There is enough room to walk between them as well. There's, I suggest doing it on the left, but there was formerly a stairwell that went on the right around the retaining wall. But the left is definitely a better access.
Any other questions of the
Would you have
applicant?
enough room to put a parking lot out in the back of the 76 and have all your cars out there and have, so they can drive out?
Short answer is yes, but, and this is just a personal value of mine, but there's a nice green space in the back right now, nice lawn. And if you were to turn it into parking, you lose that pervious lawn that people can enjoy.
Where the kids can play?
Yeah. Right now, the grandkids on Unit 1 play back there when they visit, and honestly, I just like a lawn. So,
You said in the basement there's
Here we go.
2 spaces, ingress and egress,
yeah, so.
that meet fire safety codes?
It should meet all fire safety code. Right now, there's 2 full-size double hung windows. I'll be replacing those with, because I've done this before in Vermont, more of a European style window that opens like a door.
Yep.
So that gives you full access out of the bedroom. And then you'll have full-size door, of course, over here. So that's your two egresses. I believe beyond that, fire was looking for me to put sprinklers in the building. So I've got an estimate to sprinkle the building for about $16K, and that should provide life safety.
But there's only actual 1 door.
Correct.
Right.
One physical full-size door.
Yeah, so I was just gonna, the question I was gonna ask, are you aware that going from a single or 2-family to a multi-family, there are additional requirements?
Yeah, and I believe that's what's driving the sprinklers, because I think it's a change of use from a duplex to a multi.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, all I'm saying is just be aware that there will be some additional things that you'll have to do.
I figured. Trying to work through it.
Well, work with the building department, you know, if.
So do you currently live there?
I do not. I've got another property back in Vermont, on Greenwood Lake in Woodbury, which is kind of a similar setup. It's a duplex. The basement's fully finished. I turned it into an apartment. But I would like to live here because I've got an office space that's right across the street versus a 1 hour and 15-minute commute back in Vermont. So, and not for nothing, but New Hampshire doesn't have income taxes. So.
Praise be to God.
C'est vrai.
Any other questions of the applicant at this time? There being none, if you just take a second, and then it'll be like count of 5. If there's anybody else in the audience who would like to speak for or against this application, please come forward at this time and introduce yourself for the record. Let the record indicate no one from the public wishes to speak for or against this application, therefore I bring it back. Any further questions of the applicant? There being none, any closing comments?
No, sir.
With that, I'll close it and bring it to the board for discussion. You may sit.
So if he had .02 more acreage, he would not be in
He
front
would
of
not
us?
be before us, correct?
That's correct.
That's my understanding.
How many square feet is that? I mean, that's almost like a parking spot, right? One parking spot.
Point two of 43.
23,560
Yep.
times .02, whatever the hell that is.
So,
Sir?
Math guys.
It's definitely not very big, to your point.
It's 800 square feet.
Yep.
It's really small.
That house is big enough.
Oh, I did want to say, in doing the drive-by in the property today, I'm confirming what the applicant has said relative to parking. Although today, if you saw it, the parking, the two cars that were parked kind of like right in the center of that area.
Yeah.
But if you look at it from the street, there's plenty of room for two side by side right there. So I'm satisfied with that. Sheena, question. From the city's perspective, is there a difference going to a multifamily in, you already answered the question. I take it back. All set.
And what's UC? This is in UC?
Urban
I don't know, do you see?
I do.
Yes.
Says so right here.
Yes, it
using
is.
my newly found reading skills.
You slept with it?
Damn, you got too close to the book there, my friend.
It's good
What do you
use,
think, Marcia?
I'm all for it,
Okay.
good use for the space.
absolutely.
It's right along. Yeah.
You forward enough to make a motion?
As long as I don't have to go through all the finding of facts, because I'm not very good at that yet.
Oh, good practice.
Huh? No.
There you go, Marcia.
Practice,
Come on, girl, you got it.
You do it, Michael.
That's over.
You can do it, Marcia.
But I have to
And
have
if
his
you agree with-
application number,
Which is right,
which is
007.
no, wait a second, I get the right ones here.
This is on
8 Summer Street, 006 is what I have here.
007.
Failed miserably.
007.
They learned.
At least that's what it says right here, Mike.
00, Z,
All right, I'm there, I'm sorry.
I go by the agenda.
Two, which would allow for a walkout basement in currently a two-family unit.
It's to turn the basement into a third unit.
Okay, I'm sorry, no, thank you.
To create
To-
it.
to- It doesn't impact the public in any way, shape, or form by doing this. Number two, if the variance were granted, the spirit of the ordinance would be observed because it is allowed in a UC, so therefore the spirit of the ordinance is observed. Granting of the variance would do substantial justice because unnecessary hardship. The property is unique in that it has a full walkout basement on two sides.
That's not quite what we
That's-
said, it's a singular door.
So what would be the hardship?
The lot is just a little bit too small.
Yeah.
That's the
Okay,
hardship.
thank you. The lot is just a little bit too small, so therefore there would be a hardship if you didn't grant it.
If he,
Rock wool.
Yes, it's a type of insulation, I hate fiberglass. It provides a fire barrier when combined with sheetrock.
and if I may add, it also, if it gets wet, it doesn't mildew or mold or anything. It's made of rock.
We've been bumping up against this short-term leasing thing time and time again. And I'm suggesting to the board that we do some work and maybe, I don't know what this means, first time, rewriting it, going over it. And I would be willing to be a part of that, of a subcommittee to work on clarifying our STL requirements and rules here in the town, city.
Well, that has to be directed from the city council.
Okay.
And
Well,
they would,
It's a benefit to everybody.
Oh, totally. I'm a big fan of
You know,
it.
people are saying,
In its
well,
place.
you know, these houses are being bought so they could be used for short-term housing.
Road conditions are
There will not be a plethora of housing available if short-term lodging was discontinued. I mean, it's just, people are gonna buy those houses regardless. People from Massachusetts use them for vacation houses, whatever, but there won't be an abundance of marketplace houses available if short-term lodging was completely banned.
Yeah. Oh, nobody's stumping for banning
And
it.
well, that's the
After a bit, so it may be a time.
Yeah. And I'm just,
We're
I'm
coming
willing
up
to be a
for
part
a
of that.
review.
Yep, that's all.
yes.
So, under Article 14, it says that the zoning board can submit a request to city council. Is this something that you're looking to initiate, maybe an actual discussion about
Sure.
in order to submit a request, a
Possibly.
specific request?
That seems to make sense where we.
To review
But
the.
I think that we should decide, I'm bringing it up, you know, I've only been here for a year, and we've been dealing with this, like, all different levels of how that applies. And I mean, I read and it's just confusing in some places, and I think that we could do some work on it. So if we agree that this is something that we want, I'd be willing to be a part of it.
Sure, it says that, the request should be forwarded by the board. It says, by the zoning board of adjustment, shall be forwarded to the city council for referral to the planning board.
Okay.
So it sounds like you may have to make a formal request, put together, your desired, requirements, changes. I know that, we have been putting together some, materials that need to be
At the end of the meeting, we could set up a time so that we can put this on the agenda and have like a
work session.
work session with it.
Okay.
Because we'd have to do it in a public, it would have to be noticed anyway, so we're here already as a group, and that would allow us the freedom to discuss some things and go through it and,
Right.
and actually, go through it line by line.
Sure, fair enough.
It'd be nice also if you know where it is that you're aiming for on that, that you could bring it forward to us, so.
Right,
we
that's
can
what,
see what it was.
Well,
Yeah.
I think that there would be, again, we could work through this, but I think that, you know, asking the planning board, where do you see the hiccups? Asking the, you know, our full-time staff, where are the hiccups? And then we see where it is on our side, where an applicant from Gatehouse comes in and says, well, I want, you know, even though everybody says they don't want it, and we've got, covenants of the property, and even that particular one is, and still people are still asking, there is something wrong, there is something.
The application is getting pulled, he continues to, violate the conditions of.
Planning, zoning, even the city council, and even our full-time staff, I think everybody could have some say in it. You know,
Yep.
just coordinate, get that all together, get it on paper, and see
Yep.
where it goes.
See where we can tune it.
Yeah.
To clarify, should we put this on the upcoming agenda for, what is it, March 20th? Dean will be back on March 6th.
yeah, I'd like to talk with him about it before we put on that agenda.
Okay, so we can let him know that
Yeah.
you'd like to discuss it and then potentially
Yeah.
put it, okay. Do you wanna make
I'm complete, thank you, everybody.
Okay?
Just
Any-
an FYI, I will not be here for the March, and Scott should know that I'm not here.
I can't stop yawning. I'm not tired.
It's because it's almost 9 o'clock at night.
Oh, that's why. It's about when I go to bed.
So we'll,